What's up, everyone? Welcome back to C&D Sports. Today, we have a little World Series update for you. As we're filming, we're 3 games through the World Series. When you're seeing this, we'll be 4 games through the World Series. But as it stands right now, as we film today, the Phillies are up 2-1 in this series. Going into game 4, Christian Javier, Aaron Nola at Citizens Bank Park in Philadelphia. But let's go through what's gone on the first 3 games here. And you know what? It hasn't gone the way I expected it to, but this postseason hasn't gone the way I expected it to.
Well, you know what? We called for a split with Houston at home, right? Like
Yep.
Philly was going to take one game.
I
And
just
now,
didn't think it would be the game that they took. I did not think they'd take
yeah.
game 1. I felt better with Zach Wheeler in game 2, which I shouldn't have felt good about based on what
Well,
happened.
yeah. Well, okay, let's look at game one. The Astros, I mean, they don't dominate, but it was in their favor for the first 3 innings, and Philly just kind of came back, and Houston didn't have an answer.
Yeah, through 3 innings, Verlander was throwing a no-hitter. He looked untouchable. Up 5-0. You feel pretty confident with that. You also feel confident that when Verlander hits the bump in game 5, he's probably not going to have as long of a leash if something like this happens again and he runs into trouble. But you also don't expect him to run into trouble here now that he's seen this full lineup. But I do think the Phillies gain that confidence on him, though, that this is a guy that could very well win the Cy Young this year. And we just came back from 5-0 down and lit this guy up to come
You
back.
also bear in mind, you say Verlander's seen this lineup's seen Verlander now. And
Exactly.
in my opinion, that only makes it easier for the Phillies bats to
Yeah, they've
pop
got
off
that
yet
confidence.
again.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
No, I've just been, and I think this game especially, I was very, and we'll touch on some other aspects when we talk about games 2 and game 3. This one was really the Phillies were down 5-0. You got to rely on your big name bats. You got to rely on your stars, and they relied on Kyle Schwarber. They relied on JT Realmuto, and relied on Bryce Harper, the 3 biggest bats in this lineup, the 3 guys that they are paying to be difference makers right now. And they were certainly difference makers in this game. Bryce Harper's been a difference maker this entire series. Kyle Schwarber has just hit absolute nukes this entire postseason, and game 1 he hit it, and he's continued to hit it. He's continued to hit the ball hard, hit the ball well in games following there. And JT Realmuto, he's your 3-hole guy. He's the best catcher in baseball, arguably right now, on both sides of the ball, most complete catcher. They're paying him the big bucks, and he really came through in extra innings there.
Yep. Now we move on to game two. Houston claps back with a 5-2 win over Zach Wheeler. So that's a huge win for the Astros.
It is. It's a big win for the Astros, and this is where we get into the Framber Valdez situation. A lot of people are a little confused with Framber Valdez's tactics there, accusing him of cheating. There's some interesting moves that he was making, rubbing the left arm, switching his glove out. And I don't see an issue with it. I get a little irked when I see all the baseball conspiracy theorists come out and say, oh, he's cheating. Oh, he's cheating. I mean, the guys get checked before every inning, after every inning. If something was going on, Rob Thompson put it best. When the opposing manager comes out saying that he's not worried about this, no one should really be worried about this. Framber Valdez has been doing, this is something that he claims he's been doing all season. I can't say I've watched every single Framber Valdez start from beginning to end. But guys have their own routine on the mound. I don't blame him for changing his glove, because you know what? When the lights shine the brightest here, you're probably going to get a little bit more nervous. You're probably going to get sweatier. That glove is probably going to be uncomfortable to use that glove for the duration of the 7 innings that he was in the game. And he even said it best, I sometimes do things to throw off the batter. You know what? I'm going to make it look like he's doing things that draw attention away, a little deceptive, rubbing the arm. It makes the batter think, well, why is he doing that? Why is he continuing to rub his arm? His mind's off the pitch that he's about to throw. And if he was using stuff, you'd think his stuff would be better. But, I got to give a shout out to Tim and Friends and Jesse Rubinoff here for pointing this out. If you look back at his stats in this game of the stuff that he was throwing, it was pretty par for the course, and he was throwing just season average stuff for Framber Valdez. Obviously, that's great stuff because Framber Valdez is a great pitcher. But if he was cheating, he'd probably be throwing exceptionally better. And he really wasn't that game. He was just throwing like Framber Valdez always throws. So I just think he had a good night. And I just think, the Phillies got caught off guard, not caught off guard, but they got what they expected with Framber Valdez, and they just couldn't counter it. So I don't think there's anything to really look at there. But all in all, if the Phillies aren't worried about it, neither am I, nor should anyone else. But overall, I really liked what the Phillies did there. And this is not what the Phillies, what the Astros did there. Because they, within 4 pitches, they had already hit 3 doubles and it was 2-0. They really came out early, and that's what you got to do against Zach Wheeler. Because after that, Zach Wheeler was pretty solid after that rough first inning. He was dealing, and that's the type of pitcher that Zach Wheeler is. Once he gets in a rhythm, it's really hard to get him off of that rhythm. So you got to get him before he gets into that rhythm. This is where we start to see the bottom of the lineup for both teams, but especially with the Astros. I thought Chas McCormick had a great game this game. I thought Martin Maldonado, it was the game before actually Maldonado was a little better, but we really start to see the bottom of the order in these first 2 games come through. And that's what you need. You need a top to bottom production offensively from a lineup here. And going back to the top of the order, Jose Altuve had been largely inefficient this postseason. He's really come into his own and come into the Jose Altuve we kind of expect in the World Series here. So everything went right for the Astros in this case. I think the Houston Astros did everything you could ask for to really get a series split to feel comfortable going into Philadelphia.
But going into Philadelphia, they're off to a bad start, losing 7-1 or 7-0, sorry, in game 3. I mean, it was just Phillies dominance at home.
The Phillies were dominant, to have fought, a World Series record 5 home runs. I think it was criminal of Dusty Baker to keep Lance McCullers in there for that long. You got to show your guy some respect here, realize he's having it off, and just get that guy out of there. That does nothing for his esteem moving forward. Moving forward in the series here, you can't leave your guy hanging out to dry. Obviously, the stuff wasn't there. You got to put your team in the best position to come back, because you saw the Phillies do it too. You're up 5-0. They still could have come back because they went down pretty early. It was in the 5th inning that Schwarber hit that bomb that kind of you felt the game was done, but at that point there was still a chance for them to come back. All in all, I wasn't impressed with how the Astros handled that. I got to give credit to the Phillies bullpen, though. Ranger Suarez pitched well for the first 5 innings. He got out of a jam in the 5th to come back, to leave unscathed there. But I got to shout out the Phillies bullpen, which has been doing what they've been doing all postseason. And so far this World Series, they haven't given up an earned run. Jose Alvarado and Sir Anthony Dominguez have been fantastic, leading the charge for that, phenomenal Phillies bullpen. And that was the one thing that left them out of the postseason last year. They were, as a lot of people have stated, Dan Plesac brought it up on the broadcast last night. This was a playoff team last year, but their bullpen is what made them miss the playoffs. And the bullpen was one of the weaknesses when they were struggling early on in this season. Jose Alvarado, at one point, he was down in the minors this year. So that just shows that everything is clicking right now for the Phillies. And I really got to give credit to a good Phillies bullpen right now. They've been phenomenal. And this is where we see that bottom of the order going to the lineup now. The bottom of the order was really coming through for them too. I was really impressed with Brandon Marsh hitting in the 9-hole there. I thought he was fantastic. I thought he was borderline untouchable this game. Overall, he's been phenomenal. I've been impressed with Bryson Stott with his at-bats, getting on base, putting together those pesky at-bats, driving the pitch count up for this very good Astros rotation and bullpen as well. And you really got complete production. The Phillies did what the Phillies do, and they got a lot of power, and they hit for a lot of power this game. So I really like the Phillies' chances moving into game 4 here. Aaron Nola back on the bump against Christian Javier. I like Aaron Nola there. Obviously, rougher start, tacked for all of those runs in game 1, put them behind the 8 ball, but the team rallied back. got him the no decisions. So we'll see. I think I like their chances in game 4. And then you have Verlander and Syndergaard to close it out in game 5. Do you think that Verlander is going to have do you think that Verlander is going to have the same type of start that he had in game 1?
Well, I mean, the start may not end up. He'll come back stronger, but again, this Phillies lineup has seen him, and they haven't. I mean, there's not much time between his starts, so there's not much of an adjustment he can make to counter these bats that have already seen him, have some experience against him, and have the confidence to go
Mm-hmm.
against him. So it's tough because you look at Syndergaard, and I mean, Verlander outclasses him very heavily, but the Phillies bats, I mean, they just haven't been quiet. Even in game 2, the bats, they didn't drive in a whole lot of runs, but the bats were still working in game 2. So
Yeah.
it it's definitely possible, but yeah, Justin Verlander is a Hall of Famer for a reason.
If game 1 and game 3 taught Dusty Baker anything, the leash has got to be shorter on the starting pitchers. Verlander, when he gets into trouble like that, even up 5-0, you got to make sure you get him out of there and you do what's best for the team and what's best for the guy that has to come back out there another start. I worry with Lance McCullers that he's going to be a little shell shocked by giving up 5 home runs on his own. And he still probably has to come out and pitch again if this is going to go 7 games. So, and I look at that and there's at some point where that game was insurmountable last night at 7-0. I think once it got to 7-0, we knew the Astros weren't going to come back, but there was still a chance for them to come back. And Dusty Baker can't be afraid to go to his bullpen, and he shouldn't be. Their bullpen, Houston's bullpen is, it's a great bullpen with a lot of unique pieces down there. But I think in terms of the Verlander start in game 5, and even the Christian Javier, who's probably he's going to be the weaker of the 4 starters heading out there in game 4, the leash is going to be shorter on these guys.
But now with a shorter leash and Houston's bullpen, I mean, even throughout these playoffs, they haven't been that relied on. Will they
No.
be playoff ready? I mean, World Series ready against, I mean, again, the Philadelphia bats that are very confident. They're firing on all cylinders. Even if they do go to that bullpen, I'm not entirely sure they'll be able to outduel this Phillies lineup.
Well, I look at the bullpen last night and I was impressed with, Ryan Stanek came in there, cleaned up the mess after McCullers. I was impressed with Jose Urquidy going 3 innings there, only giving up one hit and 1 walk. So I mean, it was a bad situation, but I think they did well. Obviously, you can't take a whole lot out of game 2 because Framber Valdez going 6 1/3 with 9 strikeouts. He was fantastic. So, but Rafael Montero and Ryan Presley, I think, were solid. I think they have the pieces down there, especially with Montero, with Presley kind of at the back end of that, kind of leading the charge at the back end of the bullpen. That if you can get that consistency out of the starters, you feel pretty good. And I still think they've got interesting guys like Hector Neris, like Brian Abreu, that I think these are guys that are skilled enough. But yeah, there probably is that concern, like you brought up. Are they World Series ready? Um, it'll be interesting. And I think, only time will tell because I think Dusty Baker is going to need to rely on them more moving into game 4, game 5. And if game 6 and game 7 is going to be a thing, the bullpen's going to have to come up big because, as these starters pitch more innings, the fatigue's going to start to set in on them too. And maybe Framber Valdez isn't going to be as sharp as he was in game 2. I think they're definitely going to have to rely on Framber Valdez when game 6 comes along to really be sharp again. And I think one of the big issues for the Astros too, moving aside from pitching, they're not getting any production from their DH spot. And that's something that when you look at the Phillies DH spot, with Bryce Harper there, that's something that they are getting production from. And when you get production from your DH spot, the fact that Bryce Harper and the Phillies are getting production from the DH spot, it means the lineup's doing everything else right. So that's the thing. I think that's a big, big issue with your offense. If they don't get that production out of there, good. It's good that guys like Chas McCormick and Martin Maldonado are stepping up in big spots here. Young guys like Jeremy Pena are stepping up here, kind of setting the table for their stars here, but they need more production, especially out of a guy like Trey Mancini, who they invested pretty heavily in at the trade deadline there. You got to see a better return in your investment on that there to really complement those stars like Altuve, Alvarez, Bregman, Tucker, and Gurriel. So
Well, there's still a lot of baseball to be played, and we'll be here to report on it. Series is 2-1 as we record this. It'll either be 2-2 or 3-1. Probably 3-1 with Aaron Nola getting the nod. But we'll see. And stay tuned, like, subscribe, share if you'd like to. We'll see you next time.